Andrew Urquhart with you onto the program. Regular contributors to the show, the Salvation Army Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit, and they do some amazing work in terms of influencing government policy. Of course, Salvation Army does brilliant work in our communities, caring for those most disadvantaged in our society. And the Social Policy Unit, they also put statistics forward and they submit to select committees. But something that they've been doing recently is inviting some MPs to see firsthand the work that they do in the community and to meet some of the people that are impacted not only by the work of the Salvation Army, but also impacted by government policy. Joining me on the program now is Social Policy Analyst at the Social Policy Unit, Ana Ika Talofa. Kia ora, good morning.
Whakalofa lahi atu, Andrew. Happy New Year and Language Week.
Oh, well, hey, you got me there on that one. Hey, well done. Hey, this is an exciting development. Now, normally when I'm talking to you guys, it is about, hey, we've got this policy and we're concerned about how it will impact people. That's good work as well. But really excited to talk about the response of politicians. You've invited them to come and see firsthand the work of the Salvation Army and some perhaps surprising responses.
Yeah, we, as part of our unit, we're sort of the face to government on behalf of the Salvation Army. So we spent probably the last month or so primarily targeting the Justice Select Committee. So every time there's a law passed, it goes through different committees, but everything that falls under the Justice space goes into the Justice Select Committee.
Yep.
And so we invited a lot of the Justice Select Committee across to our services around the country that sort of fall under the Justice space, but also to local MPs to invite them to visit our services that are in their local electorate, just to be able to highlight to them the work that we're doing, the community that we're supporting, but to plug in with the officers as well, because oftentimes they're getting a lot of constituents that are coming to them for help. And just trying to let them know what our services are and what help we can provide to the community. And if there are any opportunities there for the Salvation Army services to be able to help, we'd be more than happy to do that. But also, it's also a good opportunity for our unit to look at policy issues and to highlight, I guess, the wider, the high level policy stuff that our unit often advocates for to these politicians. And so, yeah, it was a really wonderful time. We had politicians come to our services in Wellington and in Christchurch. We've got and also around Auckland as well. So It's also a great opportunity for us, Andrew, to be able to pray for these MPs as well. And so that's been, that's been a wonderful opportunity.
Were you surprised at who said yes to this one and how open the MPs were to seeing what was happening with the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we had invited Minister Goldsmith to come and visit Epsom Lodge. Epsom Lodge has been around for over 100 years, and
Yep.
they primarily provide supportive accommodation for those coming out of prison, for those that are homeless, and because it's really difficult to get a hold of ministers, so we weren't quite sure. But Paul Goldsmith came through. We've had Minister Louise Upston visit Glenfield. We've had just a range of MPs visiting, and primarily because we're sort of in the social services space. There are certain politicians that are akin to our type of work.
Yeah.
But when we thought that, we didn't anticipate such a positive feedback from the politicians that we invited.
Wow.
But it was really awesome, and we're really grateful to have them come through and sit with our staff who are the experts.
Yeah.
And hear from some of the families that we support. Yeah.
I think this is a brilliant idea because, hey, nothing against statistics and spreadsheets and research and analysis, and hey, you guys do some brilliant work in that space, and as I said before, presenting to select committee, etc. That gets you so far. But when you meet the people who are impacted by the policies that you're making in Parliament, that's a game changer. I think it was William Wilberforce who said, you can never say that you don't know after you've seen this firsthand. When you see the plight of people from some of the poorer parts of our communities, when you meet them face to face, when you hear their stories about where they've been and the positive changes that are happening, that's going to stick with you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And in Glenfield, we had one of our amazing wahine tours who came through and shared her story with Minister Upston. Talked about I guess the came in 2 years ago for financial mentoring.
Yep.
And our financial mentors and the whole centre really wrapped around her and supported her to get back on her feet. I mean, usually people that walk through our doors come through at really difficult times in their lives, and she was able to share how she was able to land a job, how the Salvation Army in Glenfield sort of gave her, small steps, but small achievable steps that she was able to action and move forward with. And so we have, there are countless stories like that we have, and other social services have right across the country. But we were really encouraged when Minister Upston, who had said, congratulated her and reminded her that, she did that. That was the work. Nobody could have done that work for her to get to the place where she was at, except for her. But it was really encouraging, really touching, because her response was, I only had the courage to be able to do that because the Salvation Army believed in me.
Yeah.
And that was, someone who works for the Salvation Army, like hearing that from one of those that we support, like that's so encouraging. That even though we fight these uphill battles, that continually feels like we're going against the tide. To hear, the families that we support that. It just, and that's not part of our contracts, Andrew. That's not part of a KPI. It's not even part of our job description to be able to believe in people. But that's the nature of working in social services, that you have to believe in the potential of people, and they have the courage to be able to get up on their own 2 feet and move forward. So, yeah.
One of the things I really love about this is, in some ways, it takes the politics out of it and puts the humanity back in. Because, yes, let's tell the stories of the people and community who have gone through tough circumstances, who have made some positive choices, who are turning their lives around. But also let's recognize the humanity of the politicians. Because, yes, it can be disappointing when funding to your program gets cut, but it is also a difficult job for the politicians, making decisions sometimes in isolation and not necessarily with feedback of what's happening at the grassroots level. But yes, we need to pray for the poor people in our communities, but we also need to pray for our leaders and politicians.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the privileges that we've had over these past all these visits we've been hosting, is to be able to bring, some of that lived experience and some of the realities in the community to their attention. And just to, we've seen a lot of, I think we've said it in multiple discussions around policy, is that there are a lot of really simple solutions for complex issues. And to be able to highlight just what some of these complex issues look like, but also just highlighting that, there's a way forward. These complex issues, like there's opportunity there to be able to support families out of those positions. But it just takes a little bit more time. It just takes it just takes a little bit more support, not necessarily one that you could measure in a report. So, which is mostly what they are looking at. And so I think, very much to highlight that, politicians have feelings too, and if we can pull on some of those heartstrings, transforming hearts and minds doesn't happen overnight and doesn't happen with one visit. But as long as we're bringing it to the forefront and always highlighting, I guess, the challenges that we're facing in the community, I think that's really important.
And also being able to demonstrate, I suppose, that these are programs that are working. And when politicians are making choices about saying, hey, we can't fund everything, we may need to pull back the funding in some areas, to be able to see firsthand what is working, that's going to inform their choices.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Salvation Army, along with many other organisations, unfortunately have lost some contracts. And because of that, we're going to lose a lot of our staff in the coming weeks. And, that's really disheartening and really sad, because no one shows up to work for charity for the money, because we don't get paid a lot, but just, we show up because we love our communities and we want to support to empower communities to better themselves. And so that's really sad, the state of social services at the moment, with a lot of these contracts being cut, a lot of staff that we're losing. But God is sovereign and all these things. And
Yeah.
it just highlighted, Andrew, the importance of not being dependent on government contracts, particularly for
Yes.
churches.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was reflecting before I jumped on with you this morning around Hudson Taylor and his work in China.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think one of the quotes that he says is, God will provide for God's work done in God's way.
Yes.
And so I think that's something that we need to hold to, is that the God is sovereign, and the God that we serve is a provider for his work done in his way.
Yeah, exactly. I know it's some wonderful words there, and actually credit to the politicians who turned up, because meeting the people face to face who are doing it tough, people who are affected by some of the policy decisions that they're making in Wellington, and be able to say, hey, I'm going to come alongside these people, listen to these stories, to front up in these situations. Good on them for doing that. And I suppose just an encouragement to pray for all of our politicians, even those we didn't vote for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're all made in the image of God. In 2 Timothy, I think, chapter 2 reminds us to pray for all those in authority.
Yeah.
And so it's our so we pray for them and make sure that that they govern our country with compassion.
Yeah. No, very good indeed. salvationarmy.org.nz for more about the fantastic work that you do. Anna, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.